Looking ahead, everyone's talking about AI right now. So what's actually realistic for construction in the next couple of years versus what's just hype?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question. We get asked all the time about it too, and I mean, and we've added some AI features in job trade. I mean, I think in today's age, right here, right now, like the things that AI excels at is really content, conversational type stuff. Like, it is very very good at that. And, I think marketing content, like replying to emails, writing up emails, drafting up instructions, things like that. Like it's a great tool to help kind of like get ideas going. Like I don't know how to solve this problem. Point me in the right direction, and whether it's right or wrong, it gets your juices flowing and you go down a path instead of sitting there trying to figure out where to start. Like it's such a great tool in that regard. And so we've added a lot of tools that like, kind of again, generating content and responses and messaging, a lot of that is in there. But, I see a lot of people that are still thinking like, man, like I want AI to just generate my estimate for me and generate my schedule for me and do everything and me not have to do anything. And, I think that's like, that's still a pipe dream at this point. Like we have so much like AI and LLMs, and different models that we've been using and running here. But like, I kid you not, like you can ask it simple, basic questions that like, simple math things that like you would expect it to be a no brainer. And like sometimes it somehow gets it wrong, like when we go and we try like testing things, like, I'd call it like 60% of the time, the AI was great and it did a good job. Maybe in the next 20% of the time it was all right. I had to go fix a bunch of things, but like that last 20% of the time, the problem is it totally hallucinates. It makes up so much stuff that like my biggest concern with continuing to like go all in on AI at this point is that like my biggest fear is that somebody would go into job shred, would use some AI, would generate a proposal, send it out, gets it signed, and then gets into things and realizes, wait, I forgot something. The AI screwed up. It didn't include something, and now they're $50,000, $100,000 in the hole because like there was a screw up. And like the last thing I would ever want someone to do is be able to turn around and point the finger at JobTread and say, well, JobTread told me that, and then like, again, I think there's a tremendous amount of liability that is going to come along with this. And it's like, who's right, who's wrong? Like, this AI, like it's like this easy button that I think a lot of people are going to end up pressing, not realizing that like your mindset should be don't trust and verify. Like you have to assume that it's not right. And I think a lot of people are going to just start cutting a lot of corners, and it's going to lead to a whole bunch of problems, with jobs and with schedules.